Hi, and welcome to my chats with dads, where I speak to busy dads who are running or leading in business about how they manage their energy, their focus, and their health whilst they're spinning so many plates. If you're watching live and you've got any questions or comments, then please pop them in and we'll see if we can get to those and let us know. And I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, transformational coach and speaker, Mark Carolan. If you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
First of all, it's great to be here, Paul. Thanks. Looking forward to this conversation and this chat. I know there's a lot of people out there that, you know, kind of can feed off some of this information we give and hopefully take something away with them. So me, I am a transformational life coach and executive coach. I'm a certified actually personal leadership and executive coach and a well-being coach. And I'm also a public speaking, conference and communication coach. So it's an awful big lot. But how I would wrap that up is what I really do is I help people come back home to themselves. I help people get back in touch with who they really are, how life makes sense, and start living a life in line with what really matters in their life.
Yeah, fantastic. And a highly valuable thing that is as well. You know, I'm sure you impact a lot of lives positively doing that piece of work, and probably you get a lot of wins from it as well.
Huge. Like the perfect example, I got a text during the week, Paul, from a guy I've been working with for probably the last 9 months or so. And he came to me, a guy very stressed, under a lot of pressure in his life. And the text was from his wife. And his wife sent me a text because his mother passed away only last week. And he gave the eulogy at the funeral last week. And she texted me to say, he gave this eulogy. He told stories, he told jokes in the eulogy. It was brilliant. She said he never could have done this before he met you. Thank you so much for what you've done with him, right? That's a little thing. And that means so much to me because I got to know the guy so well. I know the challenges and the struggles he had. To see him being able to do that in that space. And, you know, there's no harder speaking than speaking in front of people you know. You know, that's the hardest speaking at all because it's, you know, in terms of a judgment piece, you know, people you don't know, that's easier. They're never going to see most of these again. So just, and I suppose for me, and I was only had this conversation with someone this morning, for me, it goes to show you that just because things are the way they are today, does not mean things will be the way that they are tomorrow. If we begin to take the right action, we can begin to make the changes and things change with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really good point to sort of start us off on as well, isn't it? Is that taking action is what leads to those changes. We can plan and we can think and we can dream, but until we actually take some steps and actually take action, nothing is gonna happen.
No, like how many problems have we taught ourselves into a solution of? You know, it doesn't. Or like, you know, another great example of that, and I had a post written, and I delayed it for a while, just on that very point, is we've never taught ourselves into happiness, but we've taught ourselves out of happiness an awful lot. You know? That's the danger of it. Like it's only through the action do we actually change things. It's only to doing something different does something different occur, and we forget that because we get so used to the way things are, used to the way things, and used to it in the frog boiling in the pot kind of way. Used to it even though it's not good. You know, we settle into it and go, this is my lot. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's where people end up finding themselves when they come to people like us for that little bit of help and that little bit of clarity. The sort of frog boiling in the pot. They don't really know how they got there, and it's probably years of in the making that's kind of got them to where they are.
Absolutely. And I think, like, what's interesting about it too is we think that it's such huge changes need to happen, right? And okay, it can be big changes sometimes, but they happen over time. Like, it doesn't always have to be big changes, even changing something small. And how I always describe this is if you're heading in a certain direction and you change the slightest little thing about that, over time, that direction has completely changed because your trajectory has completely changed. So the changes and the actions don't need to be, I change my whole life immediately. The change needs to be, okay, what's the smallest thing I can do there? Because I know how overwhelming that feels. I know how much pressure that can feel. How can I change everything? But if we just change the small things and suddenly we notice the impact, we notice the shift, and suddenly we begin to feel, okay, this feels different. Why does this feel different? Can I change something else? Can I do something else that's different? And then we build the trust to begin to do it as well.
Yeah. So these conversations generally are kind of along the lines of, how a person in your position has managed their own kind of health and energy when they're trying to do so much stuff, and especially someone like yourself who's kind of serving others as well. But I'm kind of interested in like how you got to where you are now. Was there some sort of catalyst or change? Was there something that you kind of went through that sort of enabled what you're doing now, and where passions come from?
Okay, wow. Look, I could spend the next 45 minutes answering that question alone, Paul, I think. And I think I can answer it in a number of different ways, right? How did I get to do what I do, or how did I get to be the person that I am today? I've always been curious, right? From a young age, I've been curious. I have, like I often cite as an example when we were kids going to mass in, countryside Ireland when I was young, and I would be sitting there listening to the priest's sermon, and I would dissect it and tear it apart, get back into the car and be tearing it apart, saying, what does he mean by this? Like, and then I realized no one else was listening, so I was always curious as to what was going on. And I was always exploring, I would do meditation courses, I would do shamanic courses, I would do so much stuff, try to explore, because I was always curious about what's life really about, what's really going on, right? So that's always been in the background of my life. But in the foreground of my life, I started in the financial services when I was 21 or so, I think, 21 or 22. And I had loans. I'd been out of the country for a while. I had loans and I had to pay those back, and started working, started getting paid. Then I had a girlfriend. Then I got engaged. Then I got married. Then I had a mortgage. Then I had 2 children. And then it was 15 years. I was like, what am I, how did this happen? How did I get here? And because I got used to getting paid, and now, I don't want to besmirch the work I did. I enjoyed some of the places I worked at. I really enjoyed some of the people I worked with. I enjoyed some parts of the jobs that I did. I was not good at managing my time. I had an identity that didn't work for being able to do that. I wasn't good at, I was very committed, and I had to always try and be there and perform, and that became pressure over time. And so I always knew, though, that I wanted to do something different. I always knew I needed to do something different, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what. I didn't know where to look. And then I changed jobs probably about 6 years ago, and then I was about a year and a bit into the job, and I got an email one day. Actually, I should go back. I'll go back about a month from that. I was sitting there, and it was 11 o'clock at night. Actually, it was start of December or late November, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and I was working again, US clients, trying to solve problems. I had one of the 4 teams I was in charge of had no manager, no supervisor, all out sick. I was trying to solve these problems. I just stopped myself. I said, I can't keep doing this. This has to stop. And then I realized, right, and more or less an epiphany, Paul, I realized if I don't stop doing this, this is my life for the rest of my life. And then my father came to mind, and he passed away at just 57 years old from cancer. And I said, well, you know what? Is this my life until I die? Like, do we even get that long? And I just that suddenly the fear of change, that we live under, and that probably I lived under because I knew I wanted to do something different, but I was afraid to try and do something different. That fear of change, suddenly the fear of not living my life became more relevant and became louder than the fear of change. And then, as luck would have it, it was the start of January, I got an email from my boss saying, I want to have a meeting with you at 11:30. And I was making a cup of tea just before the meeting. I thought, wait a second, I'm going to get let go here, haven't I? And I dialed into the meeting, and it was like HR were on the call. I was like, oh, Jesus, okay, what's going on here? And I had no inclination of this. It was like, oh, there's restructures and stuff, and you were last in, so therefore all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, okay, didn't mean that I didn't get angry, didn't mean that I wasn't like, am I not good enough, all those kind of things. But then, and then I went, okay, here's an opportunity, right? I was put on gardening leave for about 3 months. I went, okay, what can I do? So I immediately went, okay, what can I do? The next day, as luck would have it, I had a meeting with a coach through work. So I sat down, and she's like, Mark, why are you here? You seem to be healthy, you don't seem to have any problems. What are you doing here? And I was like, I want to know what you do. I need to understand what you're at. And then I did a couple of did NLP course. I did started with my coaching qualification, and then just went out and started doing the work for myself, and just started getting into it and making it real and making it live. And that's kind of the journey that I've taken. That was about 4.5 years ago now to get to this spot. It's been an up and down the whole way through that 4.5 years. But I think for me, for being here now, it really was an epiphany that made the fear of staying the same worse than the fear of change.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are living in that state as well, and then the sort of fear of making the change perhaps is stronger, and they sort of stay stuck in that
Yeah.
space. Yeah, interesting. So obviously you had that kind of trigger, that sort of you had a crossroads moment, and you could have decided and gone and got another job potentially and been stuck in that same situation. But luckily for you, you were able to make that leap and go for it.
Yeah, I think I kind of had to. I had to know. I had to I had to know. I had to discover. Could I? And I don't know what the next 10 years looks like, Paul. But at least I know. At least I know now, and I know I'm not wondering. And even that I'll say to people, like the amount of things and skills and stuff that I've learned in the last 4 years from working one-on-one with people, from understanding and seeing the challenges they've had and reflecting them in my own life. The amount of stuff when I'm working with people who are senior in business and understanding the pressures and challenges they have, the decisions they have to make, the amount that I have learned over this last 4.5 year period. Like there's a part of me would say, I'd love to be back in the corporate world and applying all this learning, applying all this knowledge, seeing how I could cope, how I would do in those spaces, because I think we're always learning. And I think for me, to be in this space and to learn from others, like there's such a vast amount of learning about ourselves that we do as well at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. And it's taken a shift in my mindset over the last couple of years. And I every client I work with now is an opportunity for me to learn and for me to grow as well with them. I've really started to make that more of a focus for myself personally in everything that I do as well now. There's so much power there, and actually get inspired by everybody that I work with, because they are taking their own brave steps and they're making their own changes and going on a new journey, and it's invigorating and exciting for me as well to sort of help them along with that path.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. I think that's a huge part of it, because you are coupling with someone, and you're in a very, like, if people are to ask me, like, what is coaching from my perspective, I'd say like it's a pleasure to be there and to helping someone, but it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be with someone who's been so open with you, to really, because you get to know people, and ourselves, most of our conversations with people, they tend to remain superficial. They tend to be a surface level conversations all the time, and surface level exchanges, generic transactions in essence. But when you're into that space and you're actually seeing a full person, you're seeing a round person, and you're helping them see themselves, holding that mirror up. Like when you see the truth, when the truth is in front of you, you can't not see yourself in it. There is, like, I always have a pen when I work with clients. There's a lot of times where there's a couple of notes in the margin area that are, okay, take a look at this yourself, Mark, later on, because it's there, you're confronted with it, and you need to actually ask that question of yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's no two people are the same either. So you might take some sort of knowledge or something that worked with somebody in your head into another situation, and it's just not applicable. And so, it is a constant learning and constant evolution of your own practice as well.
Oh yeah, like learn from experience. Remember when I first started, like it was one of my first clients. I'd already worked with another client, and what they were telling me was like exactly the same. So suddenly I stopped being a coach and said, "Oh, your problem is," and they went, "No, it's not." Okay, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it was it was like a slap in the face. It was like, of course it's not. You're completely different. Your entire origin story is entirely different to this person. The challenge you're facing might be similar. The problems you have might be similar, but how you are going to deal or manage or change this is going to be completely different to this other person, because we are all such individuals in how we do these things. It was an important lesson for me early on, because it's not the same. And that's the thing I love. I love when I start with someone new. Like I started with a new client just last night, and you meet him and it's like, oh, okay, that's nice to meet you. And you sit down, and after an hour and a half or so, it's like, okay, suddenly I have this big rounded picture of somebody brand new, and I had no expectations of. And I think for me too, and I think Paul, you probably do this too. My role is to help someone to see the best of themselves. So when I'm looking at someone and they come into the coaching space and they're telling me about struggling, telling me about challenges, I go, okay, well, I can see who you can be, right? I can see the best of you. And I'm not here about why you are there. I'm here about how can we get you to here? How can we let you see that? How can we let you see what's possible and let them kind of step into that version of themselves? Because then when they do it, and you can see it, and that's the magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's actually going to stick, and it's actually going to work because they've come up with it and they've found the solution within themselves.
100%. Yeah. Because it's not, we can't get in the water. They're in the water. We're in the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've got another Carolan in here. Is this somebody from your clan?
No, I don't think so. But hey, if you go back far enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's true what Chris says. It's a great privilege and opportunity, isn't it, to help others. It's when they want that change and they're willing to go through that transformation. You like you said, you really do get beneath the bonnet and kind of get to know the whole of them.
I think, look, Chris hits on a very good point, right? And I can give the opposite. I've gone into companies to work with people, and you're brought in by, maybe a CEO or the MD of the company, and you're working with maybe 4 or 5 senior leaders. For 3 of the senior leaders, you could have great work. The other 2 are absolutely resistant. They don't want to know. And so, if someone doesn't want change, then you can't. You can't help someone who doesn't want help. You just can't. Now, look, when people come to you for coaching, they're coming to you because they've made a decision in their own head. Sometimes they're not sure and they're trying to figure it out. And I'm very straight with people, Paul. Look, you're talking about dads with energy, right? I think a huge challenge, is mental health and self-talk for a lot of dads. A lot of dads are under a lot of pressure. And I'll be very clear about people about, when they come to me saying, do I need coaching? I say, well, listen, if you have a story to tell, right? And if you can tell that story, that means we can work on that story. We can change that story. If you can't tell that story, well, then you need to find a way to tell that story. And maybe that's where you go towards the therapy space, or you go towards the counseling space in order to be able to tell that story. And I think the most important part of the whole thing is if find a place to tell your story, wherever that right place is. Now, if that place is a yoga retreat, right? If that place is climbing a mountain with other men, if that place is a counseling space, if that place is a coaching space, it doesn't matter, because they can all provide something for you to allow yourself to experience yourself and be more of yourself and get out of your own way. But just do one of those things, whatever it is that will work.
Yes. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. This is something that I've accidentally created a community of dads in Bristol from 2 years ago. I wanted to start bringing dads into the gym space that I use, which is a private gym, to do a bit of strength training, because I realized a lot of dads kind of lose connection with their physical exercise and physical outlets. So it was purely just come and work out, and I've grown that now over the 2 years, and I've now got a community of dads who are all mates, and they go and have little coffee mornings together by themselves. And it's kind of become this really empowering community now of support for one another. And over that time, we're just there to lift weights, but their sort of internal characteristics and their drive is coming out slowly, week by week, step by step. And now, like I said, there's loads of friendships in this group that you would never look at them at the start and go, well, that guy's going to be friends with this guy. You never could have placed them together, and now it's just sort of happening by itself, just from coming into that space and doing something together.
I love it, and it points to a couple of things. It points to, first of all, that as men, in order to communicate, first of all, we usually need a medium. Once we have a medium we can work around, then we can begin to understand each other around that medium. But unfortunately for a lot of us, that medium becomes alcohol. And then that builds its own problems, and it becomes not a natural form of communication. But the other side of it, it just goes to show how we are struggling and looking for that space. How there's so many men out there, and a perfect example is where I am today, Paul. I moved here, probably about 10 years ago now. Moved to this particular area that I'm in. So moved, would you believe, closer to where my wife is from. I don't know how that worked out, but anyway, so it's beside the sea, so it's lovely, right? And when I moved there, I knew nobody, didn't know a single person, and I found actually there was a Gaelic football for dads team, and I had, because of knee injuries and stuff, I hadn't played any sport in a few years, and so I went and I joined them, and it was brilliant fun, brilliant crack. And then when COVID happened, a few of us got bikes and started cycling, and so now those lads that we've kind of got to know each other, we'd be good mates now, but it was only because I put myself out into the community, joined that football team, got to know some of the lads, and found a way to actually branch out from there. So now I have good friends, and every one of those other lads, I think this is the most interesting part of it, because this is a very commuter belt area. A lot of people who move up here, moved from Dublin or moved from the country, and they work around the airport, they work around places like that. None of us, not one of us, is from the area. Not one of us. So if you're not from the area, how do you find roots? How do you find other people? And you need to find that through medium, because if I hadn't gone out there, I'd still be lost here. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's so important. And this is why, yeah, my kind of local advertising now for those gym sessions isn't about the gym so much. It's about the community of
Yeah,
guys there, because I kind of feel like, and it's not for everybody, obviously, you know, not all men want to go in that gym space. But it is one of those opportunities to come and share an experience with another bunch of random guys who are facing similar stresses and problems and issues to you. And you just never know what might click and what might happen from it. So like I said at the start, it was a happy accident, really. I didn't actually intend to create a community, and it's just happened, and it's my favorite thing. And out of all of the work I do, it's the least financial beneficial to me, but it's the favorite thing that I do every single week, because I'm just never going to stop doing it now.
well, it's brilliant because it just goes to show you the return on what's happening in that space as well. Like if I bring it further, Paul, right? I'm a member of a group. It's a particular men's group. It's a WhatsApp group, right? And they will do hikes and they do stuff like that, right? And about 3 or 4 months ago now, maybe it was longer, right? There was one Sunday evening, and a fella put a text into the group, right? And it's quite a serious text. He put a message to the group saying, "Lads, I'm struggling so much. I'm thinking of ending it," right? And there was, at the time, I think there was 26 people in the group. He got 25 calls or 25 texts from every other man in the group. But what was really incredible about it, like, was the way the men in the group started to share then, because he'd said that, because he'd shown a level of vulnerability. People started telling, one lad said, like, "Look, if you want to Google this," and I won't say it because I don't want people to Google it, "here on this bridge, that's me. That's me. And the reason why I'm here is because I didn't jump. That's me being talked down off that bridge," like this kind of stuff. And lads opened up left, right, and center. So what was incredible is your man courage to open up suddenly allowed every other man the space to open up. And I think that's kind of a part of it. And that's kind of what we miss a little bit. I'm not saying we all need to get in touch with our emotions, right, and our feelings and stuff, right? But we need to be able to find a space where we can speak openly and speak honestly and feel safe doing that.
Yeah, and have that opportunity to do that when you're ready and when you feel like you can. And I think the vulnerability piece is really important. So as leaders, maybe as a coach, I think you have to be able to express that vulnerability in yourself, because we're not perfect. We don't get it right all the time. So I think if you can almost trigger that in a group by sort of sharing part of yourself and being vulnerable in yourself.
100%. Like I said to you before we started, like I'm on my way down south of the country to do a talk today, and I have to do another one tomorrow morning. And the ones I'm doing are around well-being and it's impacting the performance and dealing with change. And like the examples I use are me. Like this is what I used to do. This is why it didn't work, And because I know your UK audience are no different to an Irish audience. We do not like someone here on a pedestal speaking down to us. We do not want that, right? And so I think if you can show where you did wrong, if you can show the examples of this is what I learned in the place, then people can go, okay, I can relate to you. Like our modern world, of course it worries us, but it's like people follow, younger lads follow the likes of Conor McGregor or Andrew Tate or those kind of things, right? But older men will follow like lads who look to have everything sorted, look to be great, right? People who don't seem vulnerable, people who haven't made any mistakes, but that's not true to life. We don't see ourselves reflected in those people, and we need to see ourselves reflected in those people, because then we know, okay, this is normal. This is human life. That's what I want to see. I want to see warts and all. What do humans really look like?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I want to ask you then as well. So when you made that switch over from the sort of corporate world and you started coaching for yourself, how did you manage your own sort of energy and sanity? What were you doing with your nutrition? How was your sleep? What were you exercising? Was it actually easier to do that stuff and take care of yourself when you stepped out of that employment and went in by yourself? How did that kind of work for you?
Well, okay, I think that's a good question. I think what I found very interesting was moving from the corporate world to working for yourself, to being self-employed. Day one, you're sitting there going, okay, where's the work? Like in the corporate world, I was never like, you never had to look for the work. Like it piled in on top of you all the time. So I was like, okay, where's the work? Like, where's the work going? Who's going to bring me the work? And that was an unusual change to where I was. But I think for me, right, if I go back to when you asked me earlier about, the change to what I'm doing now, right? Like, and I said I could answer that in a lot of different ways. So many years ago, probably back around 2013, geez, that's 12 years ago now. Like I had 2 ACL tears in my right knee. Like I used to play a lot of sport and I couldn't. I got really bad, a disaster. Like I was out for over a year and a half with the first one. First game back, I tore my ACL the second time in the very first game I came back playing football. And so like my confidence and everything went with training. So I was under a lot of stress at work, and I was eating, my diet was terrible. I would just, I wouldn't leave a shop without buying some chocolate bar or something at the counter as you walk out the door, and eat it in the car and this kind of stuff. So I was very overweight. I was probably 15 and a half stone. I don't know what that is in kg, like, and so suddenly, I came home, right? And I think this is pivotal to the coaching piece. I came home one evening and my wife said to me, like, she said to me, like, what was your dad's, aim before he passed away? He said, well, he wanted to be there for his kids growing up. And she said, well, if you don't change your ways, like, what's it look like for you? And it was quite a slap in the face, because she was right. Like, he died of cancer. He didn't drink or didn't smoke, but he wasn't the healthiest. He wasn't the fittest person in the world. He wasn't very overweight, like, but he wouldn't have had a good diet or that. So it's like, okay, so how can I prevent what's in your genetic code? Because my grandfather died of cancer as well. So it's like, okay, so I have to look after myself. I have to look after my diet. I have to look after my exercise. Suddenly I had my why. My why became my kids. So I got into a routine of, I exercise on a daily basis. Like, I go to the gym on a daily basis, do all that work. And now today, like, so when I switched out of that routine, like, I was still getting up in the morning. Like, even when I changed jobs and my commute became 2 hours less, instead of getting up, I was still getting up at the same time. And then I went to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. So like this morning I was at the gym at 6 o'clock. I was down doing Qigong on the beach at 5:30 and went to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. But it's part of my routine now. And I know from my energy, I know from my mental health, like, I had a crazy busy weekend. I was so busy and I didn't have time to get to the gym, or didn't have time to get any exercise done. And I felt it. I was like, my body was like, I feel this. I was like, have to make sure I get Monday morning because it's not good for me. So I have a routine for it. And I would have kept that routine. Like, and even little things like, if you talk about managing your energy, like, something I love to do, Paul, is I love to read. I read an awful lot. And I would, first thing, I'd get the kids out the door. By 29, the kids are gone, right? And then I would read for 20 minutes with a cup of tea. Lovely 20 minutes, pure peace. But then suddenly things got busy. And then I would suddenly, at 20 to 9, I was making a cup of tea and I was rushing up to my desk and beyond the desk, and there was the cup of tea at 20 to 9. And after a little while, I began to realize, right, look, I'm going from mayhem to mayhem, staying in mayhem. I said, okay, I put back in that little break. That little 20 minutes was just a little oasis in the middle of everything that allowed me that bit of peace. And it's these little things, and hence the exercise is a key part. Like, I would try and get out for a walk because my knee's so bad I can't run, but I go for a walk. The odd time I get on the bike, when I'm motivated to get on the bike, I'm struggling with that motivation at the moment, right? But I do enough other in terms of cardio and stuff like that. So for me, it is a part. It's not a nice to have. It's a need to do because it's part of how I want to be.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of the people I work with is they're sort of caught in that trap of, once that's gone from life, their sort of whole baseline just comes down in terms of expectation and energy, and this sort of accept that this is where I am now. And we get sort of trapped in that busy cycle, don't we? We're going from one thing to another thing to another thing, and unrelenting, never having a break. And actually, I'd argue that peace and quiet time with the book is almost arguably more important than going and doing the exercise. Because it sort of lets your brain unravel a little bit, because we're just always on. We're always on. There's always emails. There's always notifications. There's always things to do. But
like a great example of it, Paul, right? If we we'll work with, like, say, work with a CEO or an MD, people who are very senior and they've got so many responsibilities. And I'll ask them about they're talking to me because they're stressed and they're unhealthy and they're really struggling with relationships and everything else that's going on in their life. I'm saying, okay, well, what's your priorities? And they'll say their priority will be like maybe getting the kids. The priority will be their clients. The priority will be the shareholders. All these lists of priorities. I'm like, okay, that's a very interesting list of priorities, right? I said, where are you on this list? And they're not on it. I was like, okay, well, if you're not on the list of priorities, how can you expect to change? How can you expect to feel better about your world, right? And I say, okay, I'll put myself in here at the bottom. But again, that's not good enough, right? What is your priority here? And I realized that 20 minutes was actually a priority for me. That was a priority. And I only realized it because of taking it out and putting it back in. Oh my God, the impact of that is massive for me. And it's those things. They're like, we all say we don't have time, right? But the thing is, we do have time. We just give it to something else. And that's a choice. But and I completely understand there can be days and even weeks where we have very little time because we have all these other things that are critical, that are priority in certain ways. But sometimes we have to take the time for ourselves and deal with the consequences of not using that time for something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you hear a lot of people saying we all have the same 24 hours, et cetera, but you're absolutely right. It's a matter of priority, isn't it, as to what you choose to do with pieces of that time. And I think that's where we sort of let ourselves down. And I think especially this is why I like working with dads, because when you become a dad, on top of career and all the other things going on in life as well, there's another new priority that just comes right bang into the top of the list. So you go down even further, and I think a lot of people just sort of go, oh, well, and accept that they're going to feel tired, they're going to feel lethargic, they're not going to sleep well, they're not going to eat well. That's just like they accept that that's what's supposed to happen. That reorder of priorities is really important. I love the fact that you sort of highlight that to them, that they're not on the list, because they absolutely should be. And actually, I would argue you should be your top priority, because if you put the time into yourself, being the best version of you can of yourself, with the best energy, with the best focus, with the best health, then you're going to be the best person for all those other priorities.
Massive, the impact is on everyone else. Hence the example is that text from that guy's wife, right? And I've got texts like that before from guy's wife saying, look, but you know what? It's not just improved him; it's improved everyone's life around him. Because suddenly he's in a different space. And I think I was talking about the idea of values and meaning and purpose this week, and there's a lot of us, and as men in particular, we lose a sense of meaning or purpose, and maybe we're chasing the titles or we're chasing the money and those kind of pieces. And that can be very important to some of us. It can be very important when we're younger to some of us, and maybe it doesn't have the same relevance as we age a little bit, because we kind of we've scratched a certain itch and we're not at that point anymore. This idea that our purpose needs to be something much bigger than us, needs to be this grandiose thing, changing the world, it doesn't, right? It doesn't have to be. If you tune into who you are as a person, if your purpose is making sure your kids are well catered for and well looked after, if your purpose is maybe looking after your elderly parents, that is big enough. There is no small purpose. That's big enough. And the energy we get from that. And if we are looking at a situation where, you're having to work very hard just to provide that, and it's draining of the energy all the time. And what tends to happen is we tend to be focused on the fact that we're doing that work, as opposed to focus on the fact that we're doing that work because it enables us to do this piece. And when we tap into that why part of it, then our energy becomes much more focused. And that's okay, I can do this because I know why I'm doing this. And I think that's one of our challenges we face, Paul, is a lot of us men, we've lost our why in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, I actually had a moment literally yesterday so my daughter's 11, she's just started in secondary school. We didn't get the school we wanted, so we're having to do this whole commute thing and get used to a whole new routine. And I picked her up from school and she took ages to come out, and I was getting stressed out because of the amount of time that was taken. And she got there and I said, why have you taken so long to come out? And she sort of went, nice to see you. And then I was like, oh my God, I've completely let my priorities slip here. I should be bloody grateful for the time I'm sat here waiting for her, the light of my life, to turn up and then walk with me home, So it was, and I sat and reflected on it last night, and I've had a whole reframe of that situation in my head now, because of what we're saying, that priority is far greater than me worrying about this time I've lost. I haven't lost time. I've waited and gained the most important person in my life to sort of come to me at the end of their day, and she's delighted to see me. So madness, really.
Brilliant. The fact that she said, "Oh, nice to see you," it's we need that, and I think, for a lot of us as men, it's lovely that you sat and reflected on it, because we don't, because we're like, no, I'm right to do this because I'm busy, my busyness is more important than everything else, and it's amazing what an excuse busy becomes. You know, like, oh, I can't attend that family event because I'm busy with work. Oh, that's fine. Like, you know, if you're busy with work, you can get out of anything nearly, you know. But is
Yeah.
it right to be able to do that as opposed to I'm busy with gardening? Well, that's not important, you know, but I'm busy with work. Therefore, like, you know, I'm busy
Yeah.
collecting my daughter. What do you mean busy collecting your daughter? Come on up. Oh, busy work. Oh, that's fine. You know,
Yeah.
like isn't it a strange skew of priorities in our society?
Yeah, it really is. And I think, you know, from my experience and from talking to others as well, you can sort of escalate anger from it quite quickly as well, and get yourself in a state where you're convinced that you're right, even though it's glaringly not really the right choice. So like you said, a lot of people don't sit and reflect and don't take much time really to think about those sort of things. Last night I could have sat and put Netflix on. And actually, I thought, you know what, I had a little stretch on the floor here, and had to think about that, and went to bed in a much better state, really, and in a much happier state.
Yeah, that's lovely. Kevin's asked you a great question there. That's a great question, Kevin.
Well, I've yet to do that, unfortunately, because I couldn't be there for this morning's wake up and drop off, but I am going to, and I'm actually going to be collecting her from school today. So I will. I'll tell her the same story and explain why I was a bit exasperated when she arrived. And you know, she in simply saying that to me when she did turn up, you know, doused the flames anyway. So I think it's an important lesson to her and to me. Yeah,
but isn't that a huge part of it? Like, you know, that we need to challenge our own behavior in those spaces, and we need to own it. We have to own it and put our hand up and say, that's not acceptable. That's not the person I want to be. And we have to tell people, look, if I'm that person, you call me out on that. Like, you know, I need to be called out on that, because, you know, we have our blind spots, and if they wouldn't be called blind spots if we could see them. So we do need accountability. We do need people to hold us to account that we do these things and say these things.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And you'll probably agree with me that a lot of the coaching relationship is that accountability piece along the way, you know.
Massive. It's a massive part of it. Like, and I don't think people don't realize that to start. Like, and I say to everyone, listen, I'm your accountability partner as well as your coach. My role is to champion you. My role is to encourage you. My role is to empower you. My role is to hold you to account. My role is to ask you why you're not doing the stuff you said you're going to do. I have people when I first start with them, and they'll have to text me on a daily basis to tell me that they're getting out for that walk or whatever it is they're doing, because they need that oversight. They need someone to report into until they've built the habit of doing the thing for themselves and they feel comfortable. But it's a massive part of it. I think people don't realize that. Like, it's, you know, if you think about it, you've got someone in your corner who's going to hold you accountable to being the person you want to be. That's a good thing to be, you know, and you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to fight with them. They're just going to, hey, Paul, you said you're going to do that. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love it. I incorporate it with all my coaching work. So I call it you're assigning your MIPs, so your most important people. And I like to get people to reflect on who those people are, and then choose one or two of them to share your goal with, or share the changes you're about to make, because then you become accountable to the most important people, and you're bloody well going to do it for them. And if they just call you up, and like you said, they might just say, oh, you said you were going to start doing this thing every day. Where's it been? What's happening? And, you know,
what's going on?
Go up for them, you
know. Kevin's asked a good question after that. He's followed up with, you know, an interesting point. Like, I think that's a really good question, Kevin. You know, I think as to what you were saying there, Paul, is that a learning moment? Like, you know, is that where we show the example of being vulnerable enough to say, yesterday I was wrong. I know I'm a bit late coming back and saying it, but you're showing and teaching the example of how you reflected and you can be wrong, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and I think it's an important lesson for obviously your children, but also for anyone you work with as well, to incorporate those sort of lessons and show that vulnerability again, and show that, you know, you've got it wrong. I think owning up to that and showing that it's okay to do that is a really important lesson as well.
Completely.
Yeah, fab. So we've gone rattling on through time. I'm kind of conscious of that. I wanted to ask you you've sort of touched on it a little bit already, but what have you got daily non-negotiables that you sort of adhere to every day in terms of just managing yourself and protecting your kind of health and energy?
Yeah, like, I suppose my morning, like, I would be very structured in the morning. Like, so I would do 10 to 15 minutes of qigong in the morning. I would go to the gym every morning, probably 6 days a week. Usually about 6 a.m. I'll do a spin class, or I'll do weights in the gym every morning. That keeps my head. Now, my sleep isn't the best because I sleep well, but I don't go to bed early enough because I'm a bit of an early bird and a night owl, which don't
Not
work well. No, and so I'm learning to be better at that. I'm learning to go, okay, it's 10 o'clock. I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I need to go. I need to go to bed and take it from there, And so I try and do those kind of pieces. But for me, and like that reading piece, that 20 minutes in the morning is really critical. And when I make sure I from a lifetime of having my lunch at my desk at work, that's and what that does for you, I make sure that during my day, like my lunch is usually a salad, and it's sitting downstairs, and I have a cup of tea, and I read a book for a few minutes. So I take a few minutes out, or I spend the time throwing things for the puppy that we have now as well while trying to do it. And I think the other thing for as a non-negotiable for me is, as a family, we have dinner together. We all sit down, and every evening it's a technology-free meal for, well, half an hour, 25 minutes, whatever time it takes, that we sit there and we actually have dinner together. I think that's a really important aspect of stuff, and we kind of talk, and we try to. We've 2 teenagers, so it doesn't always conducive to a lot of conversation. Depends. Some days are better than others, as everyone knows. But I think for me, there are a lot of the non-negotiable pieces, that I try to, and I try to ensure that I'm not on my work at night time as well. Like now, I would have, if I have clients in the evening, if I have meetings in the evening, I will try and make sure, well, then I've got a couple of hours during the day, right? I've got 2 hours during the day that I can do something, so I'll try and work my time so I do that. If it's not there, I try and take the time back somewhere else, because I know the me that gets so heavily stuck into things without any breaks, and it's just, I could do 12 hours a day and 14 hours a day of everything. I know I could, and I have to guard against that version of me trying to take over.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to do, because that is in and of itself managing your energy then, isn't it? If you misplace that energy and it's all into work, you've kind of got nothing left for the other things that then lift you anyway. So I think it's really important to try and manage that. Fab. So look, I'm really conscious of taking up lots of your valuable time. I know you've got a long drive as well later. So let's wrap things up. So if people want to find you, is there anything specific you're working on at the moment? What's the best place for people to kind of get in touch with you?
So, well, you'll find me on LinkedIn, probably is where I'm most active, Paul. I know we were talking about that before, and I have a presence on Facebook and Instagram. I don't really use all that much, the odd little time. You'll find me on my website, Mark Carolan Coaching, or you'll find me online. Like, you'll find me doing on podcasts, and on, like, I've got TEDx talk out there, which kind of, I think it sums up a lot of what I try and do in my coaching space. So with TEDx talk is titled The Magic of Being Yourself, and my coaching idea is that about trying to bring you home to yourself. And it's kind of trying to elaborate on that theme about, like, there's such a freedom in being who we really are. There's such a freedom in letting go of the ego and letting go of all these ways we think we have to be, and the roles we play. We talk about being dads here, right? And great, we're dads, right? And you never lose being a dad, right? But you also have to be you. Where is you in the being a dad? Where are you in being the boss? Where are you in being a husband or being a partner? Where are you in being all of these things? Because it's when we lose that part of us is when everything begins to fall apart. And when we reconnect with that part of us, then everything begins to make sense. And I think for any lads listening, that's the most important factor of how we begin to live a life that makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if you get disconnected from the true you, then you're not really living the life you were meant to live either. So I think it's really important to have those conversations and do that intentional work on that piece.
100%.
Yeah, fab. Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'm just going to mention my Bristol gym community, which we talked about a little bit today. So I've got coaching spaces open for one-to-one coaching, but I enjoyed this bit most of all, and we're really building a great community. And so if you're in the Bristol area, have a little look at this website here and see what it's all about. It's a really safe, private place, and it's a great group of blokes. And if you get in the next month, you'll be included in our Christmas outing, which is always good fun as well. So if you're in Bristol, have a look at that one. So Mark, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate your time that you put in for this today, and wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And it's great to be here, and keep up the good work, especially with that Bristol gym community. I love to hear that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much. All right, thanks. Bye, everyone.
See you up.